There are three ways primarily that kickback can occur. The first is during a rip cut. You get halfway through the cut and the kerf begins to close on the back of the blade. This happens often in construction lumber and other case-hardened woods. If you have an underpowered saw, best case scenario is it's going to stall it, but it could also shoot the workpiece back at you or flip it up and whack you in the face. Another way that kickback can occur is as you are cutting a workpiece, it pinches between the back of the blade and the fence. And as it does, it can throw the workpiece back towards you with such force that it could embed itself in a wall behind you. So imagine what would happen if it actually struck you. Third way that kickback occurs, and perhaps the most devastating way, is as you are making the cut, the workpiece turns toward the blade, makes contact with the back tooth, and that tooth will lift the workpiece up on top of the blade, which acts as kind of a wheel or a conveyor that shoots the workpiece back at you. Even worse, as it does that, it happens so quickly that your hand can be pulled on top of the blade with it, and that's often how amputations occur.
Abaisse toujours complètement la cape de protection, sinon tu risques de graves blessures. Les scies circulaires à table portative doivent elles aussi être équipées d'une cape de protection appropriée. Pour le débitage de pièces étroites, utilise les poussoirs pour ne pas avoir à approcher tes mains trop près de la lame. Ils sont là, toujours à disposition. Pour choisir le couteau diviseur, respecte les règles suivantes. L'épaisseur du couteau diviseur doit être inférieure à celle de la largeur de coupe, mais au moins égale à celle du corps de la lame. Veille à régler correctement la distance entre le couteau diviseur et la lame et sa hauteur. Plus la lame est haute et plus l'effort de coupe exercé vers le bas sur la table de la machine est important, ce qui réduit le risque d'éjection. Si tu dois déligner du bois massif, tu peux placer la lame à la hauteur maximale. Avec d'autres matériaux, des éclats risquent vite de se produire sur l'arête inférieure. Si tu positionnes la lame moins haut, tu obtiens une coupe propre. Mais le risque d'éjection est plus important, car l'effort de coupe est exercé vers l'arrière. Si le guide longitudinal et le couteau diviseur sont mal réglés, la pièce en bois massif peut se coincer et être rejetée. Règle le guide longitudinal pour qu'il dépasse d'environ 20 mm la lame. Ainsi, lors du débitage, le bois peut s'écarter et n'est pas rejeté par la lame. En respectant ces règles, tu pourras déligner sans problème du bois massif.
The blade and the fence should be parallel to the miter slot. If the blade is closer to the fence in the back than it is in the front, that's when your workpiece can get pinched and shot back at you. So it's very important to check every once in a while and make sure that the blade and the fence are parallel to the slot. Sometimes as we're making cuts, particularly cross cuts, a workpiece can get caught between the blade and the fence. Sometimes new woodworkers feel like they want to cut 5 inches off the end of a workpiece, and so they'll get their miter gauge set up and they'll set their fence at 5 inches. And they'll put the workpiece up against the fence and they'll think, well, I can just make a cut in this position and it's going to be all right. It's not going to be all right because this workpiece towards the end of the cut, the offcut is going to turn and it's going to pinch against the back of the blade and shoot back at you. So you should never allow an offcut like this to come free from the main workpiece between the fence and the blade. In fact, you not only want to move that fence just a little bit away to give yourself some clearance, but you want to move it a lot away because if it's still close but not touching, that offcut can still twist at the end of the cut. A square is wider from corner to corner than it is from edge to edge. And so it can still make contact with the blade and the fence at the same time and kick back at you. So get that fence out of the way as you're making your cuts. If you're making repeated offcuts, just cutting a little bit off multiple workpieces, you should also not allow those offcuts to pile up next to the blade. The vibrations of the saw will cause them to move toward the blade where a small one can get picked up by that back tooth and shoot back and potentially injure you or someone else. So get your offcuts out of the way. You also never want to work with stock that is rough sawn on the table saw. A table saw is not designed to be used with rough sawn stock. The stock needs to have a flat surface on top of the saw and a straight edge against the fence. If there's a bow or a cup or a twist, as you cut, that's going to collapse into the blade. It's going to pinch on one side or the other or both and shoot back at you. So take it to the jointer first. Make sure you have a flat surface on top of the saw and a straight edge against the fence before you make any cuts. It's very common to use a push stick when you're working at the table saw, but you also have to know how to use that properly. Some people will engage the push stick on the end of the workpiece as it's still hanging off the saw. And by doing that, you could apply pressure downward and lift the workpiece off the blade. Then it could come back down on top of the blade and kick back at you. You want to wait until the workpiece is on top of the saw so it's supported. Then you can put it on the end and push it through the rest of the cut. Push sticks like this are nice for certain situations, especially narrow stock, but I like to use a wider, longer one like this. I just made it myself from a piece of 2x6 because this has a heel that hooks on the back of the workpiece, and the body of the push block can apply downward pressure to keep your workpiece flat on the table as you push it through. Either way, we want to also make sure that the push stick or the push block is engaged in the right place on our stock. If you take a push stick and you push on the edge closest to your fence, you risk turning the workpiece into the cut. Best case scenario is you're going to get a rough cut, but worst case scenario is you could get kickback. So you want to place your push stick in the center of the workpiece, or your push block, even better. Place that in the center of the workpiece so that you push it evenly and straight through the cut. Finally, as a last resort to avoid kickback, you always want to stand to the side as you make your cut. You never want to stand directly behind the blade. Stay out of the path of the kickback in case it occurs, so it'll go past you and not through you.